Hello, everybody, and welcome to day two of our 30-hour, two-day summit for the June jungle event. Appreciate everybody joining us. Philip, your screen turned white for some reason.
I'm trying to wanted to make sure I had it showing because there it goes. How's it? Okay.
I see. Yeah, I see it. All right. I would like to personally welcome Philip Wiley, a really excellent pen tester. You're going to learn a lot from him. He's well known in the industry. And without further ado, welcome Philip Wiley. Thank you.
Hey, Joseph. Thanks for the warm introduction. Good morning, everyone, and thanks for joining my workshop. I hope everyone is doing well today. And so, first time I gave this workshop was in B-Sides DFW in 2018, and I've given it several times since, and it's kind of improved and evolved, and I intend to keep improving upon it. The certifications I have is the CISSP, OSCP, and the SANS GWAPT. I'm the senior red team lead at a large global consumer product organization. And I'm also the adjunct professor at Richland College. I teach ethical hacking and web application pen testing. I'm also the founder of the Pwn School Project, which is a nonprofit educational meetup that we teach mostly offensive security skills, but we do teach some other things in between there. We've actually had, we stream our talks each month, and with COVID, we've kind of went to a complete stream model until things get safe again. And we've had some really good presenters. We've actually had Tim Medine from SANS. He presented in person back in December, and then we had Ben 10 from Trusted Sec. He did a workshop for us back March of last year or so, something like that. He did a pen testing workshop. And I also was a Bug Crowd ambassador, and I was the 2019 Bug Crowd Ambassador of the Year. I'm the co-host of the Uncommon Journey podcast with Alyssa Miller and Chloe Mustagi. And I kind of got into teaching because I like to share information. For years, people would ask me study tips on how to become an OSCP or become a pen tester. So I was sharing those tips, and then the opportunity came along to teach at Richland College. And then I started teaching there. So it was a way for me to share on a bigger scale. And from that, I got into doing conference workshops and presenting at conferences as a way to share even more.
So yeah, before you continue on to the next thing, I just want to mention, everybody, please, if you have any questions or you need help with anything during the presentation, we have a team that's in the Discord channel, so please join the Discord channel for any questions and answers, and we'll get to them as soon as we can. I'm sorry, go ahead, Philip.
Okay. So this is a slide that I use each semester because you only want to hack or pen test something if you have permission, even better yet, written permission. You want to protect yourself, make sure that you don't get any legal troubles, because working in IT or security, if you have a criminal record, it makes it kind of hard to find jobs. So I like to share this little quote: with great power comes great responsibility. And so this is I first heard the quote from a Spider-Man movie, but that's one I like to share. It's a good way. It's really a good quote for any part of security, even blue team. You just have to really take that responsibility seriously and not do anything risky or that would endanger the security of a company. And in some cases, when you get into some areas of security, it can even be more than just security of information. In the case of like ICS, you've got people's physical health possibly at risk there. So something to keep in mind. And if you decide to do this, get into pen testing, find a reputable company or have yourself a lawyer that can write up documentation. So when you're doing the pen test, you want to make sure that the customer understands that there are some risks that could possibly take down an application, cause an outage up front, because it's just you've run into cases where you've done a favor for someone, maybe you helped someone move and you accidentally broke something during the move, and then they got upset with you even though you're helping them move for free. So, you run this kind of incidents in business, and business is even worse. Sometimes companies will try to sue when they get the chance. And so, yeah, make sure you cover yourself. Bug bounties are a really good way to get started. There's a lot of web application pen testing bug bounties. HackerOne and BugCrowd are two really great sources to get into, and they have a lot of people in the community there that can help you get started. And it's even expanded past, just web application. They do like some mobile. You can do mobile phone testing. You can do IoT testing. Even car hacking has become one of the things that the bug bounties cover. So those are really good ways to get practice, get hands-on experience in this field. That's the one good thing about between network pen testing and application pen testing, is a lot of stuff is remote, so it's really easy to find bug bounties doing that type of thing. And one thing about bug bounty is, if you do bug bounty, you can become a really good web app pen tester, because in a web application pen test, you're paid for the pen test. In a bug bounty, you're only paid if you find something, so you really have to work hard to find it. And network pen tests are usually, you've got so much time. Bug bounties usually a little more flexibility, a little more time on that. So that's a good thing. Even if you are doing some web app pen testing now, I would recommend getting into bug bounties. In our agenda here, we're going to be giving a web app pen testing overview, discuss the web app pen testing methodology, tools, discuss the lab VM and the labs, and we're also going to have some further learning. Part of the focus of this course, the goal here, is to give you a learning environment and give you some resources. That way you can practice on your own. I got this lab VM set up that contains vulnerable apps that you can use to learn with. So the goal of this is to kind of give you an idea of pen testing and then get you started with on a path to for studying. And I've got some, tell you what. Yeah, I'll be sending out the links to the labs here shortly, and also the PDF here. So just kind of an overview. Pen testing is assessing security from a malicious actor's perspective, also referred to as ethical hacking. Web app pen testing skills are helpful to application security analysts, generalist pen testers, and application pen testers. And when I mention generalist pen testers, these are pen testers that aren't specializing in a certain area. They cover a broad range of pen tests, typically network and wireless network. But sometimes, even though you're testing networks, you're going to run across admin consoles that are web-based and different administrative tools on the network, even including some applications that may be your only way into the network. As security defenders get better and technology gets better and properly configured, it gets a little bit harder for a pen tester to break into any devices on the network. So that kind of leaves you like the wireless area and applications to get in. So these can be helpful. Some common vulnerabilities you may see are like insecure uploads. So you're able to upload a shell to a Java server, and so that's one of the ways in. So understanding web app pen testing, at least to a small degree, is important if you're going to be a generalist pen tester. And pen testing overview continued. Types of pen testing: knowledge of a target. You've got limited knowledge, and then you got kind of a max knowledge, and then moderate knowledge. These are all based on the information you have on that target. The least amount of knowledge you have is more realistic to what a malicious actor would see. They're on web, they're on the internet. They find either it's a target they found that they want to go after because they know the company. There's certain intellectual property or financial gain they've seen that they want to get from that target, or it could be just random. Somebody wants to hack into something. They're on the internet and they run across your site and they test it. So they don't have network diagrams. They don't know all the information about your server like someone that would have insider knowledge of an application or no accounts. And then you get like your moderate knowledge, and this is kind of a partial, this is like limited knowledge, IP addresses, domain names, a little more information. But when you're doing web app pen tests, the more knowledge you can provide, the better of that target. So that way the penetration tester can spend more time working on on testing and less time trying to fingerprint the application. So the more information you give them, the more thoroughly it can be tested. Some people will say, this is not a true pen test, or this is not like, a malicious actor would do. But the thing is you're going to be able to assess that application even more, because maybe they've got the outside of the application, the web server and the login, the authentication piece, maybe that's really secure and you're not able to get in. So what is it like once you're able to log in? There's possibly, it could be less secure there. And also you want to check if you're just a regular user on that application, you want to make sure that they can't get to admin functions. So you really want to test each account at each level. So like a regular user, an admin, and some applications allow you to self-register. So you want to try to self-register process. So that way you're able to test everything. So even though you have those accounts, you want to test and see what you can do unauthenticated as well as authenticated. But most of the time you're going to see, and that's what I recommend, if you're doing a pen test of an application, you really need to do an authenticated pen test to thoroughly make sure that you found any vulnerabilities that you can find. And so as far as methodology goes, there's some really good guidelines out there for methodology. Say, Gary, could you mute your mic? So there's a couple really good methodologies for frameworks out there that we're going to refer to when it comes to. Oh, great. So there's really two couple standards that we will look at, PTES and OWASP. And so on the penetration execution standard, this is a really good standard. This is was created by some of the best and most talented in the industry. Dave Kennedy from TrustedSec, Carlos Perez from TrustedSec. You have Joseph McRae, who's really well known in the industry. He does a lot of training and teaching at conferences as well as does consulting. There's a laundry list of names in the industry that helped create this. So it wasn't just some company that writes a book that does some research. This is people that actually works in the field and they've seen what needs to be done to thoroughly pen test stuff. So the PTES standard takes you from the pre-engagement interactions, the calls with your client, the scoping calls, the questionnaires, and the rules of engagement. So they take you through all that information. So this is really good to go through that and get an idea of that, how it works. And there's even like a technical guide on that website that will show you the different operating systems and tools that you use for a pen test. So it takes you through all that. So it's really good. And then you also, after the pre-engagement interactions, you have your intelligence gathering, threat modeling, vulnerability analysis, exploitation, post-exploitation reporting. And so the methodology here, you got the OWASP testing guide version 4.1 is the latest version of that, and Web Application Hackers Handbook, 2nd edition. These are all really good methodologies. The OWASP testing guide is really good. Both of these resources are good to use for kind of a checklist of what to test during your pen test. And the OWASP testing guide, a lot of the testing is based on the OWASP top 10. So OWASP top 10 is going to be the vulnerabilities that you look for during a pen test. others outside of that, but that you want to make sure you cover those, because if you cover the OWASP top 10, you've pretty much covered your bases. And you can find that guide online. And there's the link for that. It's pretty easy to find in there. The OWASP website is really great for a lot of things. You can find links to vulnerable VMs, and there's also some links to some vulnerable apps that are online running that you can test, and as well as the OWASP ZAP project, which is a tool that does web application vulnerability scanning and works as an attack proxy. And we're going to discuss those more in detail. But it's a really good site for different projects related to that. There's some related to mobile app pen testing, mobile app security. So not only are there options on there to test stuff, there's also options on there how to secure and best practices to write secure code. And so when you're doing your test, this is mainly what we're focusing on, the pre-engagement stuff we're not really going to focus on. So the main things we're going to be looking at your information gathering, also reconnaissance or OSINT. OSINT gets more into intelligence, but it's still important during a web app pen test. So you can find information during that gathering phase. I've used Shodan before on pen tests where it was like full scope pen test. Only information we had was the physical address because we're testing physical security, and we knew the name of the company, so we were able to look up URLs and IP address blocks. And actually doing a Shodan search, I was able to find an FTP server out there that wasn't listed in any of their network blocks. And how I found it was Shodan found it by the FTP banner when you go to log in, how you get the warning saying this is company X's product or company X's website or application. You should have to have permission to authenticate this service. And so that little warning, Shodan picked up that banner and was able to find this server that wasn't listed in any of their resources that we discovered on the internet. So you want to do your search engine discovery for information disclosure. Sometimes there's a possibility you could find some information to log into accounts or either information on the application. Sometimes developers may put something on, information on GitHub or Pastebin that shouldn't be out there internet insecure. So that's a really good place to look there to find some things. Between that and Shodan, you're able to find stuff that you're not going to find, or you may not be able to find during your vulnerability scans. And there's stuff out there too that it could be maybe they changed something in the code or they did something on the website, but it's still working, but you're able to find information out there on the internet that you can't find with a vulnerability scanner. And so fingerprinting, so you want to fingerprint the application, try to determine the OS, the web server, and the application frameworks. Vulnerability scanning, this is an important piece. While manual testing is important and very important area to learn, vulnerability scanning is able to quickly pick up the low-hanging fruit, find things that are quick to find vulnerabilities that you can go in and test those, and that can kind of help you save a little time and make more effective use of your time during the pen test. And then your port and service scanning, even though this is web application, if you do the port and service scanning, you can find other ports that may be in use on that system or other services. And then you want to test for the OWASP top 10, as we kind of mentioned during the slide on OWASP. And some of the common tools you have here is your DAST, your Dynamic Application Security Testing software, also referred to as Web Application Vulnerability Scanners. Some of the more popular ones is AppScan, which recently is now owned by HCL, and Fortify Web Inspect, which was Fortify is a spinoff or a sub corporation of HP, but now that is the division that deals with their web application security tools. And those are two, AppScan and Web Inspect were two of the first tools out there and the most popular, but you have NetSparker, Acunetics, and then Arachne. Arachne we have on this VM, so you'll have an option to do vulnerability scanning outside of OWASP ZAP. Then you have your static application security testing or your SAS tools. This is your source code testing. So you have tools like check marks, Fortify, and Veracode. So it's important to check, make sure you have, your code is securely written. And this doesn't just apply to your typical compiled code. This also refers to your web code too. You need to test this before you even. This needs to be part of your software development life cycle. You need to make sure that you're performing these source code reviews through that. You can use these tools, and you can also do it manually. But the nice thing about the source code tool, it's able to help you get through it a little quicker, as well as you can still do some manual checks as well. That way, because sometimes humans, we overlook things or miss something, so it's a good way to have like another opinion, another view of the application. And interception proxies, Burp Suite and OWASP Zap, these are the two more popular ones. Zap is kind of a branch off of like Peros proxy, which was just a proxy, interception proxy, but Zap is more than that. It also does Zap and Burp Suite Professional both do vulnerability scanning. And an interception proxy basically sets between your browser and the web application, so you're able to intercept the traffic. And with intercepting the traffic, you can tamper the traffic. So you can intercept something, you can change some of the input. Maybe you can change like a session ID or a name or a directory and send it back, and you may be able to access directories and accounts that you shouldn't be able to access, as well as fuzzing. You can put in special characters and see how it responds. You can see if it's vulnerable to cross-site scripting or SQL injection. So that's really good to do there. And sometimes through doing this fuzzing, you're able to see errors in the application, and that's one of the ways you find out about SQL injection. Just other things could be revealed through that. You can find certain directories or that you didn't know about, and just the different error codes typically give out too much information. You can get the version information of the application framework or the web server, any of the technologies on there from those error messages, depending on what piece of the application you're causing an error in. In SQL Map, this is one of the best tools for testing SQL injection. Typically, I like to use my vulnerability scan to find SQL injection, and then take that output from it and test it a little further with SQL Map. And Nikto is an open source web server scanner, and this is a pretty good tool. I've had really good luck with this. You hear mixed reviews from different people. Some people say it's old and outdated, it's not useful, but that hasn't been my experience. I've had pen tests where I had run a vulnerability scanner, and Nikto was able to find something the vulnerability scanner didn't find. I was doing a network pen test, and this is an example of why the application pen testing is important to learn. Is I found a Apache JBoss server, and that's a Java server page server, so it hosts Java server pages. And so Nikto found default credentials, so I was able to upload a malicious WAR file, which WAR files are application files that you deploy to your Java server, and it converts those to a JSP, a Java server page. So I was able to create a malicious file, upload it, and get access to the server. From there, I end up getting access to the operating system level of the Windows server. So it's good to use a multitude of tools, and even if you're using a certain vulnerability scanner, it's good to double check. I mean, for instance, there's a lot of consultants that will use Nessus for their network and then use OpenVAS. OpenVAS is a free version of a web application, not a web application, but of a vulnerability scanner, and it's a fork of Nessus, but it's been maintained. It's probably been its own product for 8 to 10 years or so. So you'll find information you may not find with Nessus. So it's a good idea to use multiple tools. And so it's a good idea to test your network too, because one of the things you'll look at is there's a possibility that there's apps on there being used that are installed, but they're not being used. They've been abandoned. And also too, you want to make sure that the network is secure. Your application can be really secure, but if your web server, the infrastructure hosting that application is not secure, then that's a way to get in for an attacker to get in. They can get around the web application altogether. And unused services and abandoned services and applications, sometimes maybe when they built the application, they were using IIS. Maybe they decided to go to Apache because it's, faster. Maybe they decided to change programming frameworks. They wanted to get away from .NET or ASPX, and so they're wanting to go with JSP or PHP, some other frameworks. So, or maybe during the process they were testing different products and they never uninstalled the infrastructure of the web server and application server for the other app. And sometimes, people will test different products, and sometimes servers will serve dual purposes. So maybe there's FTP going on that server. They're using it to administer or other applications, so you may be able to get around that. So those are things that need to be looked at. And in your abandoned services, sometimes people are bad about keeping their systems patched and updated and secured properly. So if it's something that they're unaware of or forgot about, it could be several administrators later that they're really unaware of everything on that box. So there may be an opportunity to get in there and attack those services. And so it's not always common that usually when you're having a web app pen test done, normally they just test the application, but it is a good idea to make sure that you're having your network pen test done too. But I like to always, during my pen tests, I like to do some network pen testing to see what I can find that way. Because sometimes, you'll find some other interesting ports sometimes that leads to some good information. And so this is the lab VM. Let me get back here. And I just sent the link to the VM to the organizers, and I will give out the slides here at the end of this presentation. And so this is the link to the download, and you just want to import that OVA into VirtualBox or VMware. Both of these are very good options and work pretty well. I will say if you're using something that requires USB access, then usually VMware can be a little easier to work with. VirtualBox is a little more difficult to work with when attaching USBs, but for everything else, it works pretty well. Also, too, recently found out if you're doing Wi-Fi pen testing, that actually Parrot OS is a good OS to go with when you're doing wireless pen test. A lot of the wireless tools don't work correctly, and you can't install all of them without installing a lot of dependencies and a lot of work to get it to work on Kali Linux. So Parrot's pretty good for your wireless pen testing. So the login credentials are root for the username and Tor, your typical default Kali Linux credentials. And so this VM, the idea behind this VM, when I was building this workshop, I wanted to make it as easy to set up as possible because, everyone's system's different. There's something installed different, configured in a different way, and you go in and set something up. It could be identical VM, and someone's going to have a problem with it. Their system's not going to like it. So I found this project called Security Dojo, and what they did is they took one VM and they put the attack tools and the targets to test all on one system. And one of the things this does is prevent you from having network connectivity issues, because you have two different VMs or multiple VMs. Trying to get them to all connect sometimes doesn't work out so well. So this was a way to limit the number of resources, so your memory and your disk space are spared a little bit than having multiple VMs, and it'll run a little smoother. That way you're not have to cross your virtual network and all that and trying to get that working. So this will get you up as soon as possible. And on here, we've got the core Kali Linux pen testing tools, including Burp Suite, Community Edition of WASP Zap, and Arachne, which is a web application vulnerability scanner. We have two different browsers. Firefox is mainly going to be for your testing for OWASP Zap and Burp Suite. And then Chromium is intended to run Arachne because you have to set up a proxy to use Arachne. And so if you're needing to use a proxy for Firefox, then you're able to have that in a separate browser, run Arachne separate from Firefox. I like Firefox for browser because Firefox does not use your system proxy. Now, your Internet Explorer, Google Chrome, and Safari, they use the system proxy. So basically, any internet traffic that goes through your system, this could be your email, any other apps running, it'll filter that. You can filter that stuff, but it's just nice to cut down on the traffic. And then that way you're not interfering with any of your testing inside of a company. That way you're not messing with any of the technologies when you do that. So with Firefox, you're able to only receive traffic that's pertinent to that browser. So that's what makes it good. And we've got some proxy switcher agents set up on there as well, and we'll discuss the benefits of the proxy switcher agents. And on the VM, we also have Cherry Tree set up. There's some notes in there. It's a good way to take notes during a pen test. And I kind of put some information in there that you can actually get from the app, from the vulnerable apps themselves. When you launch them, you'll get that information. But it's just to give as much information in there without you having to hunt around to make use of this VM. And also in Firefox, I've customized the bookmark menu to include the different vulnerable apps. When you launch those, you don't have to go look at the host name or the IP address to launch them, just to make it a little bit easier. And so there's like 9 different vulnerable applications on here. It's from this one project called Pentest Lab. They're Dockerized applications, so they run these applications in Docker. The nice thing about it is it creates host names for each of the applications as well as a dedicated IP address for each one. You know, like if you're running a web server, most cases you'll just change ports on this. If you're running on the same system, a lot of times you just put the different apps on different ports. With this, they basically take your local IP address, the 1.27 address, and create multiple addresses under there. So it's kind of nice. That way you've got, you know, before in the past you would launch an app and run it separately and then go back and forth, but this does a lot of the manual tasks for you by updating your host file. And some of the apps that we have on here, vulnerable apps, is Buggy Web App, WebGoat 7.1 and 8.0, and Dan Vulnerable Web App, Matilda, Juice Shop, WP Scan, Vulnerable WordPress. This is good because you can run WP Scan against it. WP Scan is an awesome tool for testing WordPress, and this is a tool that even if you're a blue teamer, that would be good to run against some of your internal applications if they're running on WordPress, because WordPress vulnerabilities have known to be buggy and have some security vulnerabilities. And there was some out recently, I forget the details on, but it's, you know, constantly insecure plugins being rolled out there for WordPress. So that's a good one to be able to test that tool with. And so this is kind of information on how to start and stop. So you'll have this VM, this slide deck that'll give you information. Also a Cherry Tree, I've got the instructions on how to start and stop these different applications. And here's some scripts that I have set up. So the Pentester script is located in the root of the root user directory, and you just have to change to the Pentester lab directory. The Arachne script is located in the root, and basically what this does is this starts Arachne. It prevents you from having to create a link to the application or go change directories to launch the application, so it makes it a little bit easier to start that up. And Arachne is just a good one just to kind of demo. I'm not really impressed out of some of the open source vulnerability scanners. It's probably one of the least effective, or just it doesn't work so well, but it just kind of gives you a demo of a open source vulnerability scanner. As far as free stuff, I tend to lean more on your OWASP ZAP for vulnerability scanning. And so now we're going to switch over to our lab VM. And so as I mentioned, we have Cherry Tree here, and we've got instructions on Arachne, starting Arachne. It shows you the port, the administrator account information there, and then information on the vulnerable, the different vulnerable apps that we're running here. And this gives you like damn vulnerable web apps credentials. So I listed some credentials in here, and here's some list of some of the apps. If you go up here, here's information on the different vulnerable apps. So we're going to bring up a screen here. You can see what we got. We already have one application running. Go ahead and so if you navigate to that Pentester lab directory, first time you install the tool, you'll have to run, and it's already set up on your VM. But the nice thing about this script is you can run this on other versions of Linux. So say like if you want a dedicated VM that you're going to attack, and this will give you more of the real world experience if you put it in a separate VM. And so you can run these scripts on there, so that way you're actually attacking a Linux system, and you're able to hack past just the application to get that experience. So to launch this, we just launched a script like you would normally launch a Linux script. And so this gives us some of the commands, and this lists the different files from Docker. But one of the things, so we want to list the different apps. This will list them. And if you do the list view, this will give you the Docker image to launch. So if you look up here above, when we first have the list of the files, this shows the creators of the project and the name of the application. But down here, if you do the list view, what we do here is this is the Docker image that you use to launch. So if we want to start, then we go over here and we select start, and then we type in what we want to launch. So we're going to do Buggy Web App. So we already ran this before, so it's not having to create the host file. So it's running. First time you run this, you'll have to install. So we say run install. So if you want, you could just copy that URL, or we come up to our browser. And so you're in the Buggy Web App, and we're actually logged in right now. So the first time you get into this, it's going to have you to do an install. And this sets up the database for the first time you use it. Okay, so you click here to install. So the database already exists, but in your case, it will build the database. And then when you go to log in, this gives you the credentials here so you can log in. So that's one of the differences between your web app pen test and your network pen test, is you're actually logging into systems and testing while you're in there. Like as mentioned earlier, you want to authenticate the systems to be able to more thoroughly test it. So we put our credentials in, and you can adjust the security level. So low means that these different vulnerabilities are going to be a lot easier to detect. And you get medium and high level, they're going to get more difficult. So you start out your low level, learn the techniques, because some of this requires encoding. So sometimes just straight information into the injection point works well, but as you get into applications that have applied some kind of security, then sometimes it requires encoding to be able to get those vulnerabilities to work. And so we're able to come in here and then select what we want to. And this is listed by the OWASP top 10. So you have A1 on the OWASP top 10 injection vulnerabilities. So you're able to test different types of HTML injection cross-site scripting, SQL injection. So you're able to do all that. As we mentioned, this is what I usually like to start off with. So we're going to do an Nmap scan. And the syntax we're using here, this first syntax is to prevent Nmap from probing the application. Sometimes when it probes the applications, you don't get information back. So this also makes the test go a little faster, the scan go a little bit faster. And the next option here, we want to do a service scan. So we want to test any of the services on there. The next one is the default scripts. And so what the default scripts is going to do here is if it's going through and it finds a particular software or service running on there, then it will start using the NSE scripts, the Nmap search, Nmap scripting engine scripts to do more focused on the basic scans to do based on that service or application. So this you definitely get a little more information when you do that. And then also I like to use here you can use, there's all sorts of scripts. Nmap is one of the best tools you use for pen testing. It will, I mean, they've got stuff that tests for anonymous FTP. There's even like, I mean, anything you can think of, any protocol, there's tests for that within Nmap, but we're going to use the vuln script. And this basically runs like a vulnerability scan against the target. So we're going to test BWAP. Actually, since we're using Nmap, we need to put that. Some of the tools like Nikto, you need to put the HTTP first. And so we're going to output this. And even though this is maybe just running on port 80, like I said, one of the advantages to Nmap is you're able to see what other open ports are out there. So we're going to import this to. So we're going to kick our scan off. And you can add -T4 to speed it up. The -T adjusts the speed of it. And you really don't want to get past T4. Once you get to like T5 or T6, it might miss something. So we don't want to go too fast. We're missing vulnerabilities. So as you hit V, increase your verbosity. And so you see NSE timing. So it shows that it's running our NSE scripts. And it will give you the different CVEs. So this first thing it tests for, it always tests for this this broadcast AVAHI denial of service test. And so it's not vulnerable. But here's a CVE to read more up on it. So when you find actual vulnerabilities in here, you can look up those CVEs or the open source vulnerability database information and read more information on that vulnerability. That's another way, you can test it and see if it's exploitable or not, or just ways to get evidence on that vulnerability. Because when you run your vulnerability scans, you want to validate your vulnerabilities. So when you're doing a pen test, some of the basic technical steps is you're going to run your reconnaissance, you're doing your vulnerability scans, and when you find vulnerabilities, you want to validate the vulnerabilities. Once they're validated and you see their actual vulnerabilities, you see if you can exploit those, see if you can hack into those vulnerabilities, if those vulnerabilities are exploitable. And so, yeah, a really good place is just to go to the Nmap website, and there's all sorts of information on there on the different type of scripts. This is one of the oldest, longest maintained open source security softwares out there. As that's running, I'm going to go ahead and get Zap fired up. Zap's a really good tool that it's just kind of a little underestimated. So many people are using Burp Suite, which is more the industry standard, and I definitely encourage you to learn Burp Suite, because if you're going to work in web app pen testing, that's typically the tool people are going to want you to use. But OWASP Zap does so much stuff, and it's a free project. And then the newer versions, we also had there's also the heads up display, so you're able to go in and do the testing through the browser, which is really cool. So we're going to go ahead and we're going to run and see. This is, as we mentioned, this is a interception proxy, so we can actually launch this in a browser when we get ready to launch our app, and we have the proxy switcher app set up on there that we're able to switch between our different proxies. And so we go here, we have Foxy proxy set up. And if you don't set up a proxy switching program like this, then you're having to go in manually and change your proxy settings within your browser. And here we're using, you have to set Zap to a different port than usual to be able to get both of those to work. So we're able just to toggle between those, so you can have two different tools working. Although Burp Suite, you have to be proxying to get it to work. Zap, you don't have to proxy. So right now we're not currently proxying Zap. And while we're here looking at the plugins, I'm going to go ahead and show you this user agent switcher. So what this does is, right now we got set to our default user agent, and you can change user agents sometimes to bypass security. Like some of the internal network access control devices, sometimes they will use user agents, and this is how it sees that sometimes is how your proxy information goes through your system. It's able to detect that. So that's how those some of the network systems work. But you go through here and you can change this. So if you wanted to, if we use like an Android device or an iOS device to access an application, sometimes they have to modify or render the application in your browser differently to work. And in some cases, people have had to loosen security for mobile devices, even on networks. And so sometimes you change it to a mobile device, you're able to get information you normally can't, bypass some of the access controls. Another interesting tip too, if you use Instagram, if you use a user agent switcher, you're able to upload pictures through your browser on your computer. So you're able to switch to like a browser because of a mobile device, because it only allows mobile devices to upload photos. So that's one little hack that you can use for your Instagram. And so you're able to switch those. And so we're going to go back and we're going to kick off our scan here. In this tab here, there's other tools that you can add here. And there's a really good series out there if you want to learn Zap. It's called 10 Minutes Zap in 10 Minutes. And it's different short lessons on how to use Zap. It's really a cool project. I think if more people used it and got used to using Zap, I think you would have more people using the product. Burp Suite is like $400 a year, which is not too bad, but unless you're doing pen tests on the side or bug bounties to make up that money, it may not be worth it for you to spend that money. But the nice thing about Zap, you can do a lot with it. So we got our scans right here. We're going to go back and check out Nmap. We'll scroll back up and start here from the top. Okay, so it completed the 999 ports showing as closed. We didn't do a full 65K scan, which when you're normally doing an actual test or you're working with CTFs and stuff, you want to make sure to scan all 65K ports. because sometimes people will install stuff on really high ports thinking no one's going to detect it. So we're able to see some information here. So this is showing that cross-site request forgery. And this is showing some of the paths to the applications. So this is showing the login. And let's see, it's doing some enumeration for cross-site scripting. Couldn't find any DOM-based. That doesn't mean there's no cross-site scripting on there. And it's showing possible admin folders. So this is actually going through looking for the different folders on there. So this is information if you just normally ran without the this default scripts, you wouldn't get some of this information you wouldn't get. And so we got your robots.txt file, and robots.txt is on your site to show the search engine bots what to crawl. So Google's out there crawling your site. There's like you put in a disallow if you don't want that index. So like, for instance, you don't want your admin folders out there or your login page, published to the internet. So you don't want that in the search engine. So they put disallow in there. But what that does for a pen tester or an attacker, the areas that says disallow are areas usually where there's some good information. So you're able to find directories you may have not found or otherwise. And so let's scroll down and see if we got any. Vulnerable. Okay, so this is vulnerable to a denial of service attack when you're doing pen testing. Unless your customer asks for it, you normally don't do denial of service testing. You're able to report on this, say, for instance, we're seeing this denial of service, it's likely vulnerable. You would use some other tool to validate, whether that's a vulnerability, another vulnerability scanner, or some other manual attack path. Like here we have the CVE for this, so we could look that up online. And so this is showing you that SlowLoris tries to keep many connections open to your target as long as possible. So we crawled it. We go in here a little further, and there's some more information on this. MITRE has information on it. So we're not seeing a whole lot of good information. Normally you'll see a lot of different CVEs on there. And so also, since we did so we did our Nmap scan. So here's basically, you saw the Nmap output, and that's what our .nmap file looks like. So if we do a cat of the greppable format, this is what it looks like there. So this makes it a little bit easier if you're trying to grep through files looking for certain vulnerabilities or certain open ports. It makes it easier to grep. So for instance, we can go through here and we want to grep on open ports. Typically, you're going to have more output, and this would come in there and show you the open port. And as I said, Nmap, that's what the output looks like, we just saw. And then there's also the XML format. And XML is good because you can import that into different tools. Some of the different report writing tools take an XML format. That way they don't have to write the application to use a bunch of different extensions or format types. So XML is a good format for that. But what we would do is we could take and we go back to our cherry tree as you're doing your pen test. You want to keep good notes. And so, for instance, I have a sample scan that we had set up here. So you set up one node, and then you set like child nodes underneath it. And so we took our Nmap output and copied it and pasted it in here. So we have our Nmap output, and then we also ran Nikto against it, and that was our Nikto output. So as you do the different scans, put it in here. But of course, along the way, take screenshots, because this is, if you find a vulnerability or something vulnerable within that Nikto scan, then you can do a screenshot and then go back and then highlight it or circle it with within Microsoft Word to point out that vulnerability, use that as evidence. But as you keep this, as you build this out, as you're testing and scanning, enumerating, get more and more information on it, then you can more focus your attacks after your vulnerability analysis, and then try to exploit and find vulnerabilities. So we did our Nmap scan. So next we're going to run Nikto against Buggy Web App. And all these things will find different stuff. So it's good to have all these different options here. And it's also too, sometimes you may get bad output from another tool, something that's inaccurate, and so you're able to validate it with other tools. And so we see here, this is some good information because we see that it's running Apache 2.4.7 on Ubuntu. And so here's another tool that I'll demonstrate for you real quick, Searchploit. And Searchploit searches the exploit database. So we're searching an Apache vulnerability, and we see a bunch of different vulnerabilities. So what you want to do is you want to be a little more focused, give a little more information. So it's 247 is the version, so we're going to go ahead and put that in there next time. And if you don't find something right off the bat, sometimes they'll exploit DB will show ranges. So there may not be anything for this exact version. It could be 2.41 through 2.6 or something like that. Sometimes it'll show a range, so it may not show the full version number. So sometimes you may want to just even type in 2.4 or just 2 and just kind of see what you get information there. So we see that there's an exploit for OpenSSL, and there's a mod status exploit on Linux. It's a denial of service. It's probably related to that slow LoRa's vulnerability possibly. And so if you want to launch any of these exploits, this path right here takes you to where the exploit database is at, but then here's the subdirectory where the file's located. So you can, I like to copy the file over because sometimes you have to modify it. You can run it directly from that directory, but if you have to modify it, you really don't want, you want to keep your exploit DB, unedited. Just copy a version, a copy over there, and then do that. And so the interesting thing with web app pen test versus network pen test is you're not always going to find some vulnerabilities that give you access to the command line, although you can. With the networking, the more likely you are. But one thing to keep in mind when you're pen testing is it's not about just the getting root or system administrator. It's also about the information. Information is the crown jewels. That's what your attackers are going after. Social security numbers to resell, intellectual property. That's the information there. That's what they're going for. Root or domain admin, they don't care about, because if you have information as a lower level user, just a regular user, and they can get to it that way, it just makes their life a little easier to get to it. So one thing to keep in mind there. So this is listing some different files. So we also found our admin through the robots.txt, return to non-forbidden. So this means we can should be able to get to that directory. And we also see listings for the open source vulnerability database on these particular vulnerabilities. And so we also see there's a passwords file that was indexed during that. So some of these things you just go back and to your browser, and we can look and see if we can find that passwords.
How's it going, Philip?
Oh, it's going okay.
Cool.
There you go.
Looks like all your VMs and everything are cooperating today.
Yeah, it's because this workshop I've done a lot of times, and it's I got all the VMs on my system locally.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I actually use BWAP a lot in the training that I do. On the red team,
Yeah.
the web app hacking, because it has like 100 exercises, and it can be more if you look at that security level setting at the top, the low, medium, and high. That gives you a whole bunch of extra methods to attack, so you can figure out what web inject will work for it. It's pretty cool.
Yeah, it's good. Juice Shop is good as well, but you know what I like
Oh
better
yeah.
about the Buggy Web app gives you a good amount of vulnerabilities. If you Juice Shop is overwhelming.
Oh yeah. Yeah, that's true.
After let's see, back in the fall semester, I had my students do their class pen test on Juice Shop, and then after that, it's like, nah, we're going to do Buggy Web app or something else because students would get in there and said, how much of this do we need to write a report on? So it's just too much stuff to go through. Which
Yeah, WebGoat is also another really good framework.
yeah, and it comes in the script that we use, this Docker script. So let's see here. Yeah, well, for some reason, I spoke too soon in my labs.
Uh-oh. I
The
spoke too soon then.
yeah,
Sorry. I,
jinxed it.
I knocked on wood.
Let's see. We'll give this thing a second here and see if it, because I had a couple different types of scans going on here. Probably the OWASP Zap scan going on here, so we'll give that a second. So maybe what I can do is just go ahead and pull up get the link for the slides and give that out while we're waiting for that.
Yeah, are all these, is this VM the one that you also link to that everybody can download?
Yeah, that's the VM, and I'm going to go ahead and pull up the slides. That way they've got the slides too. They can go through. Actually talking to Pentester Academy about writing a web app pen testing course for them.
Oh, that'll be good. Yeah, they have a lot of material.
Yeah,
I think what they need is more labs like you built here.
yeah, yeah. It's some good stuff, and I've sent him a course outline, and so just have to kind of go back and modify some things, get back to him. So looking forward to that. Yeah, it's been just recently found out one of my students from the spring semester last year got a pen test job.
Oh, that's great.
So far I've got 3 students over the past 2 years that are working,
In the
actually
field.
like 4 students that are working at pen testing. I've got more than that that are working in the field. But that's another thing for people is listening. If you're not in security, security is a good field in general. There's a lot of good stuff. You don't have to be a pen tester. If that's what you want to do, then do it. But you know, Blue Team, they do some cool stuff too. I think people kind of underrate Blue Team. And so we're back to, so I got that link out there to share. And so now it looks like maybe Zap crashed on us, but we got control back of the system. So we see when we looked in that passwords directory, there's no passwords actually there, but we're able to find some different files. There's like a web config backup, which we can download that and take a look at. There's also, this looks like for WordPress. Even as far as like bug bounty related stuff, the things I've really seen the people that do really well are the ones that really dig and dig looking for information. And also too, anyone that's pen testing, one of the things you can do too is you can run a lot of these tools on Mac OS or Windows or your favorite version of Linux. Because typically what I do for web app pen testing is I'll run Burp Suite and Zap on my host OS and then have like a Kali Linux VM for other tools. Because sometimes it's trying to get those dependencies to work, and some of those tools don't work on anything besides Linux. So we see some information here, and this is showing some MySQL database information here. Okay, so this looks like we actually got like a user account. So okay, we're the database name for Buggy Web App. So we see like the username is Thor and the password is Asgard. So that's a possible password here, but this was for WP config. So I don't know if they're using actually WordPress for this app or not. We could try that for grins. I need to look more at Omar's project, his Websploit project.
Yeah, it's pretty easy to download. You can download just Kali Linux and then run a script, and it'll download all of the tools for some of the courses that he does as well within Websploit. But yeah, it's a pretty solid platform. I had trouble with the version of BWAP that I was using, and worked with him to get that fixed. But it was mainly because he had spent a lot of time. He put a lot of time into each of the Docker pulls that he had operating on there. So it's pretty solid platform.
It's interesting to see that so many. So yeah, that doesn't work on this app. So we tried that password, but that doesn't work. So yeah, it's one of the interesting things is I see that some of the sharpest people out there aren't pen testers. They work in other areas of security. I mean, this for some people, it's amazing the people like that Omar that make this stuff look easy. Okay. So yeah, that didn't work. But yeah, so what we'd do here now too, since we got WP scan, we can run that.
Yeah, for everybody that's in this course watching it, this is kind of a real live use of pen testing. You're going to have successes and failures, and you're going to run across lots of little artifacts that you're going to do a lot of research on. Some of them will be helpful, some of them will be rabbit holes. So, like Philip's showing you here.
So we're NICTO against that. We have the vulnerable WordPress application I'd spun up while we were getting started. I want to do this WP scan too. This WordPress scanner is pretty good. The thing about it, you can actually find credentials. Let's see what we need to do first here to get it to. URL. Yes, this is one part of technology that there's a ton of trial and error, and man, Joseph, you're having those weeks where you just felt like, you just everything technology wise hated you and wouldn't work.
Yeah, at least once a month. I have a
Yeah,
week like that.
I had a week like that here recently because I was doing a web app, I mean, a wireless pen test for my company, and for some reason this is not working. But I'd start out with Kali Linux, and some of the newer versions of Kali Linux doesn't like the alpha cards, and I even updated the drivers and all that. It wasn't working, so I ended up having to go through and install uh, Parrot OS instead, which ended up working out pretty well with wireless. So yeah, it's just one of those things. Everything you turn around, it was just tough. I'm gonna go ahead and bring up Zap since we get to see the output of that. Hoping maybe it's saved. But the interesting thing about Zap is that they've kind of affected the way they've kind of encouraged Burp Suite to be a better tool because like the plugin section on Burp Suite, they used to have to manually upload everything, and Zap has this manage add-on section, so you can go through and add your plugins through here. Before you had to upload them manually to Burp Suite, and they end up adding that product. So that since they got a little competition, it keeps Burp extending and improving upon their tool. I'm gonna let this run. I was going to show Burp Suite, but I probably need to not get too many things going so we don't lock up the system. So you can see this scan along. If we go over here to our alerts tab, this is where we're going to find our vulnerabilities. So path traversal, this one can be an interesting one because sometimes you can go through and possibly find directories that they mean to expose. Sometimes you can find like the Etsy password file and that sort of stuff sometimes too. And then we can add the other tools, so you can do like Ajax Spider for some of your active pages that you can scan with that. Enforced browsing, we mentioned some of the tools. Dirbuster for directory browsing. Dirbuster, the code for that is part of OWASP Zap now. I think they quit. I don't know if they still maintain that project or not. But this directory brute forcing, you can come in here and select. So we've got our site selected, and then you select your list. There's other list you can select, but we're just going to select this default list here. And part of this could be just running the VM. When you go to try to start it, it doesn't want to. So sometimes you just go back and reselect this. Then it highlights your little start button. And so this tool will go through and find different files and directories that you may have not found during the scan, because it uses like a dictionary. It uses like a word list to look for certain extensions and file types. So you could go through and actually create your own lists. So if you find things that you're seeing a lot of, so like you know over your test you're finding these certain folders a lot, then you can go and create a list. You could go in and take like a little list and take like the top items that you're finding, put in that list and run it, so you could quickly find some information. Then you can go back and run bigger dictionaries later if you want. So we're able to see some of these forbidden directories, so you can go in and manually try to see if you can actually get to it and see what those folders are protecting. Here's just a server error, so there's a good chance that doesn't exist, what it's looking for. Where you see the 200 HTTP codes here, it's showing that it's okay, so it's found that directory. So that exists on that application. So we see the WP admin, that's the typical login page. As you do more of this stuff, if you know you're testing this WordPress application, then you would know to go to WP admin to log in. So that's your login screen. And you can actually launch your browsers through here. So if we want to launch Chrome, you could actually launch it through Chrome or Firefox. And to show you this Arachne vulnerability scanner, we'll go ahead and start that up. While that VM is trying to catch up, I should have loaded another application. I'm going to show everyone a good resource for further learning in web application pen testing is portswigger.net. Portswigger is the creator of the Burp Suite tool. They have a really good educational resource called Web Security Academy. And these are one of the authors of the book, The Web Application Hacker's Handbook, is one of the creators of Burp Suite. And so they have this website up here that's an educational website. So you can go here, and this is all the different learning materials that you have on these different vulnerabilities. So they will have you see SQL injection, DOM-based vulnerabilities, cross-site scripting. So if you want to read up on cross-site scripting, you come here. This gives you all the learning content on cross-site scripting, all the details about that, the different types. And then you go through here, and so if you want to read more on it, they got some more information here. And then you go down, and there's some labs associated with this. Okay, so we go to this tab, and they've got a lab. So you go through here, you just access the lab, and this launches the lab, and you use Burp Suite or Zap, whatever tool you want to use it spins up this application, so you can go through and test that. So this is a really good place to learn. And this starts out, the nice thing about the Web Application Security Academy, it takes you from beginner to advanced. So you can work through these things, these different sections as much as you want to. So we want to look at just the labs. You can click on this. Here, just the SQL injection labs. So that's a really good resource there. And to start, Arachne. We have this Arachne script. We launch, and just to show you what's in that script, it's a pretty simple little shell script, just a little one-liner. So it just basically launches it from that, so you don't have to direct. You could make a link to that, and that way you just launch it by typing the command, like kind of like Kali Linux does all the other applications. But it's just a quick and easy way to launch this vulnerability scanner. It's kind of mentioned a lot and mentioned in several resources, and I kind of listed. I really question why I keep showing it, because it's really not that great of a tool. So here we can see some of the scans we ran before here. So just to add a new scan, you can schedule your scans. So we're just going to take the default on this, and we're go. And so if you go up here, you can stop your scan or pause your scan. Go ahead and bring up burp since Zap crashed again on us. That's where some of this stuff, if you're running your main pen test tool, is good to run for your host OS, because it's not gonna, the tools aren't gonna crash like that on you. Just the limited resources we have for this VM. I'll let this catch back up there for a minute.
How are things coming along?
I had launched too many items, so
Oh, okay.
so waiting for memory to catch back up.
Yeah.
So who ended up with the giant alien from Texas Cyber Summit last year?
I donated it to a group, Sam Sci or Sam Tech or something like that. It's a school here that teaches students about technology.
Oh, cool.
And really the point of it was to show them that I kind of thought of an alien that would look like a nation state. So all of those aliens were like Russia, China, North Korea. They all had symbols on the top of them.
Oh, cool.
And then they were instead of zapping people and like turning them into dust, they were basically zapping the devices and stealing the data. That
Oh,
was
okay.
the image. That was the image that was set forth for last year. But that giant alien was actually started out as a concept in my mind. I gave it to an artist. Artist turned it into artwork and a rendering. Then we took that and then we sent it to print, and so that body of that alien is all 3D printed. So it's like 6 foot by 5 foot by 3 foot,
Oh, wow.
and it weighs about 200 pounds, maybe 250 pounds,
Wow.
just the body. The legs were made out of foam, but the whole point of it is that if you can dream it, you can build it.
Yeah. And
So
that's a good example there too. Not, that you're able to come up with stuff and show people how to build it, because sometimes I find a problem myself is I have a hard time delegating or asking other people to help me. And so just seeing that, creating something, getting someone that can build that instead of, trying to do it yourself, you may have been able to, but then what kind of 3D printer would you have had to purchase and how much of your time would have taken? And you take your idea and you give it to someone that does that kind of stuff and let them bring it to life. That's a good lesson there.
yeah, it's pretty cool. As far as I know, they're supposed to. When I talked to them last year about it, when they got it, they said that they were working on a space. I haven't checked with them this year to see where they're at in getting it hung back up, but the top of the alien is about 20 feet
Oh,
from the
wow.
bottom of the feet to the top of the alien. Yeah.
Yeah, I remember that was pretty cool.
Yeah, it came a little late. I was supposed to get it a month before I got it, and one of the things that was planned, the eyes on the front of it, were supposed to be replaced with colored LED lights that
Uh-huh.
are like um, maybe 8 inches around. So it was supposed to look a little more realistic. And then in the mouth, it was supposed to have a motion sensor and then a directed light. So when you would walk by it, the light would turn on and the beam would come on and like beam you. But like I said, it showed up a little late. I couldn't get all that done on it in time.
Huh. That's really cool. It still turned out great.
But that's those are the components that I will build into it once they have it deployed at the school, at the museum. I'm planning on going back and doing all of the retrofits for that, so they'll see the completely finished product.
Well, that's cool.
Yeah. All right. Well, I'm going to drop off for a minute.
Okay. Yeah, I get it.
Looks like you're doing well.
Okay, so we had to reboot our VM here, so we're going to go ahead and open up Burp Suite and show you that real quick. I know this thing's one to redirect to. Okay, so we're going to pull this app and we're going to show Burp Suite. And whenever you're using Burp Suite and Kali Linux, there's always some Java error. That Java version is okay to run Burp Suite. So we have to go here and set our browser to point to Burp Suite. And the thing is too, is you can set these colors so you can kind of see Zap is blue and then an orange color for Burp Suite. So we got that set. Go ahead and refresh our browser to get it to start proxying through Burp. So you see our tab up here highlighted in orange. So you can just sit there and forward through there, or you can turn the interception off. So we have our target. So what we'll do here is we're going to go ahead and add it to our scope. And so this is, you have added an item to the target scope. Do you want Burp proxy to stop sending out of scope items to history? So we can go ahead and say yes, so we don't get a bunch of other information in there. Because for instance, if you go through there, you can see the website that it's from. It pulls up that information. So we can even go a little further here, and we can show only in scope. So that way we hide that other information. So in Burp Professional, you'd be able to come here, right click, and do active. Now it's just the newer versions is just the options are different to scan. And the old options were scan this host and passively scan. And so you can still spider. That's one of the things you can do. And one of the things you want to be careful when you're doing Burp spiders is when you go through there, this information come up with the username and password. If you just submit that to the form, then you can end up causing problems with the application. So you want to go through there in your settings and add like an actual password you're using for the pen test and actual usernames, because it could ask for, there's information even asking for like email address and just username, email address, address, and all that. If it's not, you want to populate that with something of use, and even maybe disable the automatic submission, because you can actually have problems on a pen test if you don't do that. So we're just going to ignore the form. So the spider is running, so you can stop that whenever you want to. And so with the community version, you can do all sorts of manual testing, but the automated scans you really can't do. So what I'd recommend supplementing that with, if you don't want to get the commercial version of Burp Suite, then I would recommend using Zap for your vulnerability scanner to do your vulnerability scanning and do more manual testing with this. So there's also some good tools on here for, I've got this, if you go to Extender, you have the Burp Suite store. And so you can go ahead and install different plugins and extensions as they refer to in Burp. But if you go here and click on details, we can sort by required Burp Suite Professional. And this is just because it needs the functionality that Burp Suite Professional has, that it can't run it without the professional version. So the CO2 plugin right here that we got installed, it's got a SQL Mapper plugin. So this is what I really like, because with SQL Maps, say I found something that was vulnerable to cross-site scripting, I mean not cross-site, but to SQL injection, I can right-click it and then send to SQL Mapper. And so you have to configure that to find Burp Suite, to find SQL Map. And once you get this set up, once it's kind of there in place, you don't have to keep reconfiguring it. And actually using the combination of Burp Suite and SQL Map, I was able to get command line access through a SQL injection vulnerability on a pen test once. And this was like from the outside, from the internet. So far, it's been my favorite all-time hack. Look for SQL map. So it's under user bin SQL map. So we get that set. So we hit run, and it's going to launch our window, SQL map. And so we didn't really have any injectable SQL map information there. But if you do, and just if you wanted to launch SQL map directly, maybe there's a wizard function here, so we could use wizard. So it's going to ask us for a URL, so we're going to put in damn vulnerable web app. And so you set the injection difficulty, so we can set. Sometimes you can start out with the easier, and then you can try all. Probably not gonna find anything because there wasn't anything injectable. Once you find like an actual injection, it'll sit there and run through. That's one of the nice tools for that plugin. So a lot of these different tools, you can take stuff and put it in repeater and change stuff up and see if you can get a different reaction. Also, too, this is really good for brute forcing passwords. You can use like a password list and direct it to your site. Right, that's one of the interesting things with Burp Suite. Burp Suite, as well as a lot of other tools in pen testing, has really eliminated the need to have to be able to script. I mean, I'm not discouraging against it. It's good to learn Python, but these tools make it a lot easier, because before in the past, trying to do some of these brute forcing passwords, you either write a script or you could use something like Hydra, but then that gets a little more complicated because your single line of syntax you have to type in there can get pretty convoluted, because if you have redirects in there, then you have to account for the redirects for the login and all that. But Burp Suite makes that a lot easier. And there's some other tools in there too for web app pen testing. Let's see, Comics. This type of tool right there. It actually will, some cases, that there's an opportunity to get command line access to Shelter system, that you can use that. Paros proxy was kind of the predecessor to OWASP Zap, or actually the technology was used in Zap, and they kind of enhanced it, added the vulnerability scanning and some of the other capabilities to it. WebScarab is also a web proxy. That Paros and WebScarab were like two of the first. And then of course you got WP Scan there. If you have a WordPress site, you can actually pull credentials from it, database information, all sorts of stuff. Since we're getting close to the top of the hour, do we have any questions so far, Joseph?
Let me see. I mean, there's a lot of activity in Discord, but no direct questions.
Okay.
You do have a little bit more time, so if you need more time, feel free to run over. There's nothing butting up against your session.
Okay. Yeah, I don't think we'll need a lot more time here. So if anyone has questions, also if you're on social media, you can find me on LinkedIn or Twitter. If you're not on Twitter, that's a really good place to get information. There's a pretty active information security community on there. A lot of people refer to it as InfoSec Twitter, but a lot of good information out there. And you'll find a lot of people that were presenting and doing workshops at this conference on there as well. And as we was talking about a while ago, the user agents, this is what your user agent gives you here. So in the application, it sends this information to the application so that way, or the website, to help it properly render in your browser. And so as we would change that in our proxy switcher, this would show up different in our HTTP request. Some information here too, like the cookie information. Sometimes this could be replayed, or you can, tamper with the cookie to see if you can change characters to access as someone else, log into someone else's, enter someone else's session. In this right here, where we set the security level on this, there could be some applications that there's some other function within that application that could be like this is security. That could be something else, some other functionality is set to a certain way you may be able to access some way. So this would be something in an app. If you ran across something similar like this, you would try to tamper with that, see if you could change that and get any different reaction out of the application. Also got coming up here on the, I believe the 16th of July. Actually, the 15th of July, I'm doing a webinar for BugCrowd on pen testing. I've been doing a new series for them. I was doing one called the A Day in the Life of a Pen Tester, and we start another series. It's a little bit different. Before we have like an audience, we'd have like 2 to 3 people and discuss them about pen testing. Now we take like one pen tester at a time and spend that time talking like on more specific subjects. The last webinar we had, or the very first in the series, we did one on ICS pen testing, and that was really interesting. And the next one we got coming up is going to be on web app pen testing and bug hunting. So the guest we have on there is pretty good. He works as a consultant and he also does bug bounties. So that should be a good informational talk there. And usually I ask people what their advice on getting into the industry and learning resources. So usually pick up some good information there. That's one thing, as you take more and more of these courses and workshops, the way you see it displayed differently, the way someone explains it differently, and sometimes it's just seeing it like a second or third time that it clicks or you get something different out of it. So our scan completed there. And it's interesting too, I was learning something going through some of those videos on OWASP Zap, they said that they really built, I mean, on Juice Shop, yeah, on OWASP Zap, but the Juice Shop project, they really built it to not be so much an automated scan type of vulnerable VM. They intend for you to go through and manually find things. So I found that kind of interesting. So if you really want to build your manual testing skills, then Juice Shop's another good option. And another good thing about Juice Shop, if you wanted to install it in the cloud, you can install through Heroku, and they let you set it up for free, and it's already up there. It's one of their applications that you can install, and it's hosted for free, so you can actually have more of a real world pen test feel to it. You're having to go across the internet, so it's up there and you're testing. I've actually installed it that way for my students to test against. That way you don't have to install on your local machine. It's just up there and running. And there's also like plugins where you can do like a CTF, so you can actually compete against. If you want to build a CTF, you can use Juice Shop, and it's got like a scoreboard, so you can compete against other people. So if you have at your school or something, you want to do a CTF or one of your meetup groups or something, that's a good way to use for a CTF. So I was hoping to see some here SQL injection related, so we could do a little more with SQL map, but we can see that this means there's a good chance that cross-site scripting is a possibility, because the cross-site scripting protection is not enabled in the HTTP headers. And then Xstream headers. And the thing I like about Zap is it goes in detail telling you the OWASP, relating to the OWASP top 10, and they give you the CWE IDs and WASC IDs. So give you different references, and you got your risk ratings for it too. So this is the kind of stuff you'd put in your pen test. And for your remediation section, you've got the solution. So they're kind of telling you what you need to do here. And then they got a reference to Microsoft MSDN article. And so that's kind of one of the nice things about your open source projects. They don't have any agenda to sell products. It's a free product, so they're not going to, typically you're going to get more, I feel like, honest opinions sometimes, instead of just trying to recommend you another product or something. So. Well, that's all I had. If anyone has any questions, I'd be happy to answer the questions.
I am looking to see if anybody has any. There's none posted in GoToWebinar.
Okay.
You still do have a little more time if there's anything else you want to cover, or if you want, we can end it here.
Yeah, that's it.
Okay.
To cover. But thanks
for
the
opportunity. So you hold monthly virtual meetups, don't you?
Yes. I can give you the meetup link to that. And also, people can find information on our Pwn School website. Yeah, we stream these and record them, so we've got like several recordings up there. So if you go to videos, it'll take you to our YouTube site, and we also have a Slack for Pwn School, and we have some experienced people in the field. So you're getting started in security, we've got blue teamers and people that work in pen testing on there. And let's see.
So someone said you mentioned using Shodan to find an FTP server that wasn't listed. Was the banner enough to prove it was the target? Did you find any additional information, evidence before attacking the FTP server?
I did find the name of the company on there, was able to validate with the company. It was it was actually in Singapore, I believe it was where it was hosted. So it's interesting what you can find on there. Usually it's more geared towards your network vulnerabilities that you're finding, like when the latest vulnerabilities come out, like RDP and stuff like that, then I'm putting the meetup link in there.
Yeah, you have to be super careful when you find stuff outside of the range of your original contract or the original engagement, and make sure that if you find something, you don't attack it, you get it amended to the contract.
Yes. And then that's another thing too. You want, when you're doing an external pen test like that, you want to go through and look up the different network blocks and validate. I've done pen tests before where I went through and validated and find out, okay, these are IP addresses that belong to another company. Earlier in my career, I was, given a specific subnet to scan and turn around. They'd goofed up and gave me the wrong IP address, and I was scanning some other company. Luckily, nothing came out of it, but you have to really be careful and cover yourself because we're all human. We make mistakes. It's really easy to accidentally type in an IP address wrong.
There's a question about what tools do you like to use for testing APIs or web services? He says, I've been using SOAP UI Pro.
Yeah, SOAP UI Pro is good. I mean, if you've got that tool, that's nice because since you can do some kind of vulnerability scanning, I usually use like Postman or something, and you can integrate it with Burp Suite.
Yeah.
And I believe like Zap, I think it actually directly does API scanning.
Yeah, I wish more people would support Zap, like contribute
Yeah.
to it and add more features into it. Like you were saying early on, if more people used it and more people got involved in the project, there would be more capabilities built into it.
And I think it's a better tool than people give it credit for. Until you get in there, you watch some of the videos by Simon Bennett, the creator of Zap. Until you get in there and start goofing around with it, you don't realize what you can really be done. I mean, I think there may be a blog post or people have worked on it where they've written like mapping functions to Burp Suite. So that's one of the things I really want at some point. I want to look into more in creating this web app pen testing course that I'm working on. One of the things I may look into because I mean it's a good tool and it's free. I mean
Right.
it's pretty close to Burp Suite. And the interesting thing is it's got Selenium built in, so you can do some automation. I'm not real clear on how you do that, but I know someone locally, I mean, it might have been someone in Houston or San Antonio area or Austin that did a talk a while back that was a member of OWASP that did a talk on automating pen testing with Selenium. I think what happens is what it boils down to is I think more people that are using it are people that are in AppSec or development and less people that are in offensive security. I think if you got more people on the offensive side or bug hunting side involved it could probably really help the tool a lot.
Yeah, I agree.
So any other questions?
Doesn't look like it.
Okay. I guess that's it for me. I
Well,
appreciate
thank
it.
you, Philip.
Thank you for the opportunity. I appreciate it.
Yeah, I'm happy to have you. You're welcome anytime.
Thank you. Yeah,
All right, thanks everybody. We're going to end this session. The next session is actually on Zoom. If you want to join the Zoom, it was posted in the chat on Discord. So thanks everybody, and have a great afternoon or morning.
thanks everybody. Bye.